I would simply say, if I had to guess, the folks that are standing for delivery are far more sophisticated than they are emotional. And the emotion is, well, they continue to be able to do this. How can they continue to do it? How can they continue to suppress the price? They'll do it indefinitely, but they won't, because the demand for delivery continues to outpace expectations, continues to outpace any precedent. And so this is the little by little by little, and that's the part people have a hard time with. This entire era of instant gratification and it not being fast enough, I think, is being attacked methodically and in a very regimented way, where they will continue to slowly bleed dry the exchanges at a manner that doesn't stop everything in its tracks by just throwing all the money and say, no, we want delivery. They will play the game until the game is no longer able to be played. So I don't know. I just think that Rick is right from a standpoint of recency and normalcy bias. But if indeed these deliveries continue the way that they have, these games will end up being an existential threat to those that are silly enough to suppress the paper price to that degree. But I would say that this will be, at least in the case of gold's up a little bit, silver's sold off. And, on top of everything, this comes in the face of what Bank of America just said, maybe one of the boldest silver calls ever. Their head of metals research, Michael Widmer, I think is his name, said silver can reach between 135 and 309 by the end of this year. And, he wasn't even talking about this. He was talking about the gold to silver ratio and the reality that silver tends to lag gold early in the bull market, and then in later stages it moves violently. So anyways, the bottom line is that what we are seeing globally, I think, is probably far more impactful than the markets will lead us to believe, at least initially. So I would urge everyone to pause and have a little caution in terms of the way they think things are going to play out here over the next several days, and we'll see what happens ultimately to the price.
According to Andy Schectman, physical silver is draining out of the Comex at unprecedented rates, signaling a systemic breakdown in paper markets. Bank of America projects silver could hit $309 this year. He warns the entities suppressing prices are playing a dangerous, potentially existential game they cannot win.
The amount of delivery that we see is making naked shorting a very, very dangerous game, and continues to play into the hands of those that are standing for delivery. And I think that that's really the crux here. What is changing the landscape of the metals market, in my mind, is a system that has lost its integrity, and a system that no longer carries the kind of trust that it needs to have to be the global benchmark. When you see a market in continued backwardation that is normally never in backwardation, it's normally in contango, where the current price is less than the futures price. The futures price takes into account interest, storage, the cost of money. But for a long period of time, it continues to trade in backwardation, meaning we want it now. We don't trust the future. We don't trust the exchange. We don't trust any of it. We want it now. When we see repatriation from the central banks, from the Bank of England, the New York Fed, that means we don't trust the system. And when you see in the month of February, roughly 15 million ounces more delivered off of Comex than was delivered into the exchange, or should I say leaving Comex than was delivered into Comex. In other words, 15 million more ounces left the building than deliveries can explain. You begin to understand a trend, and that is a trend of erosion of confidence and trust in the paper market, continuing to short that market when there are very well-heeled and sophisticated traders, from central banks to sovereign wealth funds, standing for delivery, where price misdirects most people and most institutions, but not these folks. It's a dangerous game, and it's one that won't end well, in my opinion. You're beginning to see that. That's really what we see happening for the first time ever. We're seeing the Western markets and the hegemony associated with them be challenged simply through rules that they employed themselves. Now, in an effort to mitigate said rules, 4 times in 2 months we see markets that glitched, right? Twice to the up, twice to the down. When they fell both times, oh, sorry, the circuit breakers broke. We apologize. Don't do anything about it. We just let it collapse. And on the way up, oh, sorry, it overheated, and we didn't even figure out what the last one was, where the market was halted. Trading was halted. In both cases, they got slammed. And then in both cases, well, we haven't seen what will happen here. But last time this happened, silver went up 120% in 60 days. So we'll see if that happens again here. But what you are witnessing to me is the realization by some very big money traders that they have these Western entities that are playing this game kind of trapped in the respect that let them keep playing their game, we'll keep standing for delivery. And you can see that in the ever-increasing delivery numbers. Someone or someones are saying, fine, go ahead, knock it down. We will continue to stand for delivery. And that plays right into the hands of those that look at the dollar price as one that is certainly valued, I think, less than the dollars used to buy it, or more than the dollars used to buy it, rather. They don't care what the dollar price is. They're continuing to stand for delivery. And when you see the outflows out of Comex outpacing the deliveries into Comex, that's about as rare of a bird as it gets. So you're beginning to see the other side of the coin quietly playing their hand right into, I think, using the manipulation of the Western banks to their advantage. So it's not going to last forever. It's frustrating that it continues to last, but these are desperate acts by desperate entities who are playing by rules that are beginning to become obsolete, in my opinion. And I think maybe the most important phrases of this era is that, you could boil it down and say we have unlimited cash but limited hard assets. That's the thesis, really, is that a system that can conjure up cash in unlimited quantities runs head first into limited hard assets. Fiat money can be created in effectively unlimited quantities. Hard assets cannot. Gold cannot be printed. Silver cannot be printed. Copper cannot be printed. Energy cannot be printed. And I think once you really understand that, you begin to understand why hard assets matter so much in an age like this. And I think there are those that are beginning to realize that for decades, markets have been dominated by the West and by paper and by leverage and by derivatives, by financial engineering, by narratives and interventions and price management. And I think we're moving back towards a world where physical supply and demand begin to matter a whole hell of a lot more than paper positioning. And when that happens, something very important changes, and that is price begins to reconnect with value. That's a big deal. A paper market can suppress price for a long time, but it cannot suppress value forever. And I think that is the most important question of all, or leads to the most important question of all, is what is the value of a promise that cannot be kept? And a buddy of mine, Mike Savage, writes about this all the time, and that's one of the things he always asks is, what is the value of a promise that cannot be kept? I agree. What is the value? The value is not very much. And I think he also would say, what is the value of a currency that cannot be constantly diluted to survive? There are people like Bix Weir, who believes that 3M has a patented technology that could have been integrated into the coins. It's called diamond dust, acts like a fingerprint, would be on the coin so that if indeed it ever got to a point where you wanted to have it authenticated, they could just like that, can do it. That's just conjecture. I love Bix, but I've never seen anything other than it being an interesting read. But no, there are no chips inside of these coins that I'm certain of. I think that you will see a move in silver from here that would be far greater than most people are prepared for. So I don't know why I thought so much about this. I never talked deeply about gold like this, but as far as I'm concerned, gold and silver are far more important than people are being led to believe. And paper is a promise, and gold and silver are finality, unlimited cash, limited hard assets. And when price finally meets value, which rarely happens, but if it does, it won't happen politely. So I guess that's all I wanted to say, is that you go back as far as you want to biblical times and you see a significance of gold and silver that have been ignored. And even though history doesn't always repeat, it certainly rhymes. And here we are, thousands of years past when the ancient Egyptians or Incans or Mayas were accumulating gold and silver for properties and qualities far bigger than investment. Here we are, and the most well-informed traders on the globe continue to do so. You do not be distracted by the price. Do not be distracted by the noise, and look at the reality of it. And is that gold and silver coming full circle back into the realm of significance, and not paper significance, real significance of delivery and of lack of counterparty risk. And I think, I don't know, these are the kind of things that keep me up at night. Like, it's far deeper than it's just a commodity. It isn't. And you go back to the beginning of time and understand this, and you begin to see a bigger picture. Makes it easier for me to be calm about it, because if it was that important 6,000 years ago, it's probably far more important today. And I don't know. That's all I wanted to say. Hopefully some people got a little bit of interesting tidbit out of that. To me, it's just a deeper reflection of what it truly is to man. I read a really interesting article yesterday, and then I thought about it myself, because I did a speech not too long ago. I was at a conference that was more related to mysticism in Canada. I was asked to speak at it, and there is a great interest in gold in that community, more so than I ever would have imagined. But the report that I read last night, which I found very interesting, talked about how across ancient civilizations, gold was treated as something transcendent. In Egypt, it was associated with the divine, like the flesh of the gods. And this is all around the same time, way predating any form of global communication. The Incas saw it as the sweat of the sun. The Hindu and the Buddhist traditions symbolizes purity and enlightenment, prosperity, permanence. The Greeks thought gold belonged to the realm of the gods and the immortals, because gold has qualities unlike anything else. As a metal, it does not corrode, it does not rust, it does not tarnish, it does not decay. It endures. You can't get rid of it. You can't destroy it. You melt it, it coagulates and forms again. You throw it at the bottom of the ocean, pull it out 400 years later, it will look brand new. Maybe this is why so many civilizations saw something in gold more than wealth, and today is the same thing. They saw permanence. And the speech that I gave, when I think about gold and its relevance, it's very deep to me. I mean, when you realize how important and permanent gold is, precision, and the mindset of the ancients, the ancient Egyptians, more than any, all these civilizations reveled in gold, and they understood how to mine it, to refine it. You look at King Tut's mask and the precision, the symmetry, it would rival anything modern goldsmiths could do today.